So here we are in chapter 12 with our last type of solid that we're going to do volume of, which is pyramids. Um, you can kind of think about it similar to the cone, except the cone had a circular base and came up to a point, and the pyramid has a polygon base and comes up to a point. So there's one base, pentagon, rectangle, and all of the, like I said, it all goes up to one point. So these lateral faces here, the faces along the side of it, those are triangles. But we name the pyramid based on whatever the shape of the base is. Okay. Now, for the pyramid, we have the height, which is what we need when we're calculating the volume, and then this is called the slant height. So the slant height is the altitude of one of the side triangles, one of the lateral faces. The height is if I go to the point here and go straight down to the center of the base, that's the height. So we'll talk about that in a second. Here's a couple of cross sections, similar to when we did the cone, right? If you cut parallel to the base, you get a cross section of the shape of the base. In this case, square. If you cut perpendicular, so slice down vertically through the tip of that pyramid, you get a triangle. Here is the formula for volume of a pyramid, which is exactly the same as a cone. 1/3 times the area of the base times the height. So a cone, its base is always a circle. It's always the area of the base is always pi r squared. The pyramid, we have to see what type of polygon is the base, and then use that knowledge to determine the area. So again, just like we said when we were doing prisms, if it helps and you want to go back and look at the first section we did for this chapter with the area review, perhaps that will help. So let's look at example 1. This is a pyramid. I can tell because it has one base, excuse me, and it goes to a point at the top. So I have to say, first I need to recognize that it is a pyramid. Then I have to say, what is the base? Well, if you look, it has 4 congruent sides, and it has 4 right angles. So it's a square. So the shape of the base is a square. How am I going to calculate the volume? I'm going to do 1/3 times the area of the base times the height of the pyramid. Well, the height of the pyramid is this segment right here, which is 12 yards. The area of the base, well, it's a square with a side length of 10, and the area of a square is side squared. So it's going to be 10 squared, which is 100 yards squared. What's the volume? It's 1/3 times 100 times 12, which is 400. And again, since this is volume, it's yards cubed. That one was pretty straightforward. This one, similar. It's a pyramid. The shape of the base is a square. The height is clearly labeled, 24 centimeters. And then I can easily get the area of the base by just doing 20 squared because it's a square. So what's the volume? 1/3 times the area of the base times the height. Once again, the units are cubed because it's volume. Now, here is another square pyramid. Shape of the base is a square. But in this case, they didn't give me the height, which is the one we need right here. They gave me the slant height. Well, the height of the pyramid is always perpendicular to the base. Here it is. This is a right angle right here. Okay? So, if you look at this triangle, that's a right triangle. And you know 2 sides. I know the hypotenuse, the side across from the 90, because it's labeled, it's 6 yards. And I know that this leg here is 2 yards because the height of the pyramid hits at the center of the base. So if you start at the center of the square and then walk to the side here, that's going to be half the length of this segment. So since the entire segment is 4, you're doing half of that, it's 2 yards. So you have the, I don't know what the height is, you have 2 and you have 6. And it's a right triangle. So you just do the Pythagorean theorem to get the height. So h squared plus 2 squared equals 6 squared. H squared plus 4 equals 36. Subtract 36 from both sides. H squared equals 32. how do I go from h squared to h? I square root. So h equals the square root of 32. Again, we throw away the negative answer because we're talking about length, so it has to be positive. And then I just reduce the radical by just turning the root 32 into root 16 times root 2. What's the square root of 16? 4. So 4 root 2. So I wanted to be exact, so the height is 4 root 2. What's the area of the base? It's a square with a side length of 4. So it's just 4 squared, which is 16 yards squared. So what's the volume? 1/3 times 16 times 4 root 2. Type it in just like that. Your calculator, hit enter, and then round to the nearest hundredth, and you'll get the same answer that I got. Now, this is another composite figure. So what we have on the bottom is a rectangular prism, and then what we have on top of that is a rectangular pyramid. So let's do the prism first. I'm doing this part here and this part here, ceiling and the floor, as the bases of my prism. Remember, prism has 2 bases. So the height of the prism is going to be the distance between the ceiling and the floor, between the 2 bases. So that's this right here, this 5. This 5 is my height. The area of the base, well, the base is just a rectangle. So the area of a rectangle is base times height. So that's 5 times 13, that's 65 meters squared. And then what's the volume of the prism? Well, it's just the area of the base times the height. So it's 65 times 5, it's 325 meters cubed because it's volume. The pyramid has the exact same base as the prism. It's sitting right on top of that prism. They're sharing that base. So its base area is going to be exactly the same. It's still that rectangle. The height of the pyramid is from here stretched up to the top of the pyramid, which is 2.1. So what's the volume of the pyramid? It's a pyramid now, so that's a different calculation. It's 1/3 times the area of the base times the height. So that's 1/3 times 65 times 2.1. That's 45.5. So the volume of the bottom prism here is 325. The volume of the pyramid on top is 45.5. What's the total volume? Add them up. No rounding required. So as you go forward and you start practicing mixing all these different solids together, it's pretty obvious that the cylinder and the cone have the circular bases, right? Most people are fine with that. But when you get to prism or pyramid, you want to ask yourself, how many bases does it have? What is the shape of the base? And then I'm going to use that to help me pick my formulas and get it right. So if it comes up to a point, there's only one base, that's a pyramid. If it has 2 bases, you can walk across the top of it, that's a prism. That's a different calculation. Okay. So practice that, and I'll once again remind you that if you're calculating the area and you want examples of the area of the base, you can look at the beginning of the chapter for the area review. Look these notes over, have the formulas handy when you're working on the homework, and you should be good to go. Once you can do all the volume of these solids, particularly cones and cylinders, then the next 2 sections, which are the last sections of this chapter, will seem a lot easier to you. Good luck.